There's something almost no one says clearly about the AI anxiety that experienced professionals carry. It's not, "I don't know how to use this tool." It's something underneath that, something quieter and harder to name. It sounds like this: the most capable version of me may already be behind me. That's not a fear most people say out loud. It gets dressed up as, "I'm not technical enough," or "I haven't had time to learn this." But underneath those versions, in the part of the mind that runs late at night when the day is done, it's this: 20 years building something, and the rules just changed in a way that might make it irrelevant. That's what this video is going to name. Not to make it smaller, not to tell you it'll all be fine, but because once it's named clearly, something else becomes visible, something the fear has been sitting in front of. So let's start with what the experience of the last 18 months has actually felt like. Here's what the experience of the last 18 months has felt like for a lot of people who've been doing skilled professional work for a long time. You watch a colleague, younger, less senior, navigate an AI tool in a meeting with apparent ease. You nod. You say nothing. And in the space where nothing is said, something concludes something. It doesn't announce itself as a conclusion. It just settles, the way sediment settles. And what it concludes is, they have something I don't have. Not just the tool, something the tool revealed. Some kind of native fluency with this new world. Something you apparently missed while you were being competent at the old one. That's the fear. Not, "I'll lose my job." It's something more specific and harder to dispute. The rules changed, and the people who grew up closest to the new rules have the advantage. And if that's true, then the 20 years aren't a foundation. They're weight you carry into a race that favors light travelers. That's the version that doesn't get said in performance reviews. It gets said in the car on the way home. Or not said, just carried. What makes it so hard to shake is that it feels like evidence. The younger colleague looked comfortable. You felt disoriented. Comfort and disorientation. That feels like a verdict. But here's what the fear misses, and this is the part worth slowing down for, because it changes everything that comes after it. The disorientation you feel and the ease they seem to project are not measuring what you think they're measuring. Which brings us to what the research actually shows. There's a pattern in the research on AI and expertise that almost no career content talks about. Probably because it's counterintuitive. And counterintuitive findings are harder to make a headline of. Here it is. AI tools are genuinely useful for almost anyone, but their most powerful applications happen when they're combined with deep domain knowledge. Not despite deep knowledge, because of it. In specialized professional tasks, AI accuracy rises substantially under expert guidance, from around 90% to nearly 95% when a domain expert is directing and reviewing the output. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between output you can use and output you have to redo. And the person providing that guidance, the one whose expertise moves that number, is not the youngest person in the room. Studies on expert AI collaboration show that experienced professionals are more likely to catch when AI output is wrong, less susceptible to over-reliance, better calibrated to know when to trust the tool and when to question it. Novices, by contrast, often over-rely, not because they're less careful, but because they don't yet have the context to know what wrong even looks like in their domain. Here's a specific example that lands this differently. When a research firm introduced AI assistants to their scientists, discoveries increased by 44%, but that increase was driven by a doubling in output from top researchers, not from junior staff. The tool didn't close the expertise gap. It amplified whoever was on top of it, and the people on top of it were the ones who knew the field. Research from MIT Sloan found that for every percentage point increase in AI adoption at a company, demand for management and judgment roles increased 2.5 to 7.5%. with employers specifically seeking the kind of contextual, interpersonal decision-making that develops over years, not months. The pattern isn't AI favors the young. The pattern is AI amplifies whoever knows their domain most deeply. That's what the evidence says. Not the career coaching version of the evidence, the actual version. Now let's look at how this actually works in practice. So why does the discomfort persist even after seeing this? Why does the younger colleague still feel like evidence of something? Because there's a difference between knowing a thing is true and being able to see it operating. And the mechanism, the specific way domain expertise functions inside an AI interaction, is invisible until it's described. Here's what it looks like. When an experienced professional opens an AI tool and types a question, several things happen that look exactly like what a novice does, but aren't. The first thing is framing. Not just what you ask, how you frame the problem. A novice asks, "Help me with this report." Someone with 20 years in that field asks, "I need to communicate 3 things to a VP who's going to push back on the second one. Help me structure this so the second point lands before the resistance forms." The tool has no idea that the VP pushes back on that kind of recommendation. You do. You've been in that room. The 20 years are in the prompt, even if no one can see them. The second thing is recognition. When the output comes back, the experienced professional reads it differently. Research shows that spotting AI errors requires background knowledge and close analysis, the kind of capacities that take time to develop, and that novice users often don't yet have. A novice reads output and asks, "Does this sound right?" Someone with 20 years reads it and knows, "This recommendation will create a political problem in my organization." The third point contradicts something we decided 2 years ago. This framing would be seen as overreach by the person who has to sign off. The tool doesn't know any of that. It never will. What it produces is as good as the knowledge that reads it. The third thing is direction. Not just evaluating the output, knowing what to do with it, where to take it next, what it's missing, what question to ask the tool to go further. Researchers at Northwestern found that people trained to evaluate AI outputs began making decisions more like experienced professionals because they were building the context needed to understand why certain outputs made sense and others didn't. That context doesn't come from knowing AI, it comes from knowing the domain. That's the mechanism. Frame, recognize, direct. 3 operations that look invisible because they happen before and after the tool runs. And they are entirely made of what you built over 20 years. The tool doesn't know what you know. It cannot learn your organization's political geography. It cannot replicate the judgment you've built from watching what works and what doesn't in your specific field, your specific context, your specific professional room. Your expertise is not competing with AI. It's what makes AI produce anything worth having. That's not consolation, that's the mechanism. The piece of this that takes the most work isn't understanding it. It's translating it into the language you actually use at work, into how you talk about yourself in a performance review, into how you describe your value when the job posting now asks for AI fluency. There's a resource in the description built specifically for that translation. It takes the reframe from this video and turns it into the professional language you need before the next conversation that matters. Now let's bring this back to what actually changes on Monday morning. So what does this actually change on a Tuesday morning? Not the theory, the morning. The specific thing you open and type. Here's the objection that's probably still live. I've heard your experience matters before. It sounds like something people say to make experienced workers feel better. Show me that it's actually different. Fair. Here's the demonstration. Take the last professional document you wrote. A report, a proposal, a summary, a memo. Open Claude. Paste it in. Then type this. I'm sending this to role of reader. What are they most likely to push back on? And where does this need to be stronger before that conversation? What comes back will be general. And here's where the mechanism activates. You'll read the response and think, that's partly right, but they missed the real issue. That gap between what the tool says and what you know is not a failure of the tool. It's evidence of what you bring. Now you refine the prompt. The real issue is what you know about that person or context. Given that, what changes? And what comes back now is something you couldn't have gotten without your 20 years. Not because the tool is more powerful, because you directed it with knowledge the tool doesn't have and never will. That's not a one-time exercise, that's the pattern. Every time you use it this way, you're not learning AI. You're discovering where your expertise and the tool intersect and making that intersection larger. Here's the thing about the colleague who seemed comfortable in the meeting. Comfort isn't the same as competence. A novice can look fluent with a tool and produce output that a 20-year veteran would immediately know was off, because the veteran can see the gap between what the tool said and what the situation actually requires. The disorientation you felt watching them wasn't evidence of their advantage. It was evidence that you were measuring the wrong thing. What you were measuring. How comfortable they looked with the interface. What actually matters. What happens to the output when someone who knows the domain reads it. The second output is better because of what you know. That's the advantage. That's where it lives. Not in looking comfortable, in knowing what to do with what the tool gives you. If this opens something you want to go further on, especially the piece about translating this into your actual professional language, the link in the description and the pinned comment will show you where to go next. What's the thing you know about your field that you've never seen an AI get right? Drop it in the comments. So here's what you now have, not a tool, not a workflow, a name for what the last 18 months have actually been doing. They've been making you feel like the ground shifted under you, and it has. But the thing you built on that ground, the 20 years of framing, recognizing, and directing, didn't become worthless when the ground moved. It became rare. Because here's what's actually true about the current moment. AI tools are everywhere. Everyone has access to the same ones. What's not everywhere is the knowledge that tells the tool what to do. The institutional context, the political geography of an organization, the professional judgment that knows the difference between technically correct and actually useful. That knowledge is yours. It took 2 decades to build, and no one is going to get it in a weekend course. The thing worth holding on to from this is not a step, it's a sentence. Your expertise is not competing with AI. It is what makes AI produce something real. That's the inversion. And once it lands, once you can see the mechanism operating, it stops being something someone told you to make you feel better. It becomes something you can watch yourself doing every time you open the tool and type. Frame, recognize, direct. That's your 20 years at work. This is what mid-transition looks like. Not behind, not left behind, in the middle of something with everything you've built still intact, and now, finally, a place to put it. The ground moved. You didn't. And what you're standing on is worth considerably more than you've been giving it credit for.